Kseniya, it's all yours. We have a holding argument why IIT and other causal structure theories, all of them cannot explain consciousness.
Hi everyone, nice to see you here. As Sergey mentioned, there is a cake. It's like my birthday cake. I had a birthday, I guess, on Monday. So you can help yourself. And some preliminary words. Maybe, as you know, thank you. I'm interested in consciousness, and I'm engaged in causality project. Also because a lot of people believe that the causal approach to consciousness is very promising, and
Nothing can help.
So I decided to find this link, and just before we arranged our reading group, I searched for some papers with the keywords consciousness and causal something, and I found out this one, and it doesn't sound promising. As you can see, the opposing argument why IT and other causal structure theories cannot explain consciousness. So it looks like causal theories are not very promising to explain consciousness. But unfortunately, their article, this article is not very good. So I would say it's kind of bullshit.
This goes on record.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's very simple, short, and controversial. And maybe these people were able to publish this paper because it was accepted on the 1st of April, I guess. But
are you sure it's not a joke?
I'm not sure. But let's start from some history. Maybe some of you remember that several months ago, TJ reported a review from Nature paper about theories of consciousness. Do you remember this report?
I remember.
Okay, cool. And raise your hand who was not there. Oh, so not many.
TJ remembers this important part.
Are you talking about a Neil Sess paper or?
Oh, okay. Anyone, who of you read this paper or?
Yes, a Neil Sess paper.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of you.
Well, I guess me and TJ.
And maybe this also. Cool. And that's why I think that it should be, I should remind you about some important parts of this paper. So there were 4 main theories of consciousness, or 4 main groups of theories of consciousness. Hot or hierarchical order theory, GBT or global workspace theory, IIT or integrated informational theory, and reentry or predictive theory. I guess it's kind of combination of 2 different theories. And in few words, each of these theory has its own focus. So the main idea of hierarchical order theory is that a mental state is conscious if it's a target of another mental representation. For example, I guess there is a conscious mental state, and it's conscious because there is another mental state or another representation in the brain which is like which can observe or the second one. The second theory, global workspace theory, tell us that a mental process is conscious if it has an access to the global workspace. So there is a global workspace. It's kind of a network, or it's like a network somehow connected with working memory. And if there is a process in the brain that is not connected with this big global workspace network, it's not conscious. So this is the main idea. The third theory, information integration theory, tell us that consciousness, it's kind of causal structure, causal mechanisms, and its state. And the last one, the last theory, hi Sajjad, tells that consciousness perception, it's a top-down recurrent signaling. So if we can see something and there is only one direction of perception, it won't be conscious. And if there is a loop, recurrent loop, so this perception will be conscious. Okay. And another interesting detail, and at the same time the problem, is that actually if we talk about different theories, they are really different for different domains of science. For example, for biology, physics, psychology, economics, mathematics, and so on. And if we would imagine a biological theory of consciousness, this theory should answer questions like, how did it appear in evolution? What genes are connected with consciousness? What is the functions of consciousness? What are the biological structures connected with consciousness? And what kind of animal have consciousness and or don't have? If we're talking about physical theories, we usually ask such question as what is the nature of consciousness? Is it quantum or not? What kind of laws, like physical laws, can describe it? Is it deterministic or not? If we're talking about psychological theories, the main questions are about our about our psyche, about our states of mind, and so on. If we are talking about economic theories, it's about how to manage people's decisions. And for mathematical theories, we usually answer such questions as how to define consciousness through mathematics, what kind of informational process are there in consciousness, and so on. And also there is a philosophy, but usually philosophers don't create theories, they just create problems and questions. Okay, but what are the common questions to answer in these 4 theories that were presented in this Nature review paper? The common questions are, in what part of the brain is consciousness located? For example, the answer for IT is usually that it's parietal zones, and for global workspace theory, it's like frontal and parietal zones. And for hierarchical order theory, it's more about frontal lobe. The second question is, how does activity in the brain become conscious? So, for example, for global workspace theory, the answer is that if some process is connected with global workspace, it will be conscious. And the third question is, what distinguishes different local and global states of consciousness? global states of consciousness, it's like awake state or sleep without dreams or coma or something like that. And local states are, these are very particular states. For example, state when I'm drinking the coffee or something more special. Now there is a question. Can you find the most odd theory between four of them? You just
I guess IIT, because that's the one you're researching.
No, they're all odd.
Causal mechanism.
You mean which theory doesn't fit among those four?
Yeah,
The hard theory,
why?
because it defines itself from itself. Because it says absorbing, that means that thing is conscious. So if something is conscious, that means it's conscious.
Okay, I have the answer, of
Yeah.
course, because IIT. And there is a reason why. You know, let's come back to philosophers who are always create the problems. Maybe you remember the hard problem of consciousness. You know what I'm talking about? No? So before 19th, people try to understand and explain consciousness in terms of neural correlates of consciousness. And that was a program of Crick and Koch and some other people, and they just try to explain what are the patterns of neural activity that can explain some kind of functions and some kind of behavior. But the philosopher David Chalmers, he created such kind of a problem as hard problem. So he said that there are two parts of the problem. The easy problems, it's about neural correlates of functions and behavior. This is the lowest part. How stimulus, what kind of stimulus can be transposed to what kind of responses, and what kind of neural activation do we have in this particular situation. And the hard problem, it's about our subjective experience. For example, I feel, or I think that this is the red color, but maybe I'm just talking that it's red color, but what I'm feeling is green color. And the idea was that we can't explain this phenomenon, this experience, if we are talking about the activity of neurons. So that's why if we try to explain consciousness,
I don't get it. I don't get it. Why not? If you're colorblind, it's all kind of physical, but you are embedded in the system. So whatever you see as green, you know, everyone calls it red and you call it red. Everything is deterministic up to some noise in your detectors like your eyes. What do you mean that there is, like, everything is defined by neural activity?
that's a kind of primary hypothesis. That's what you
Well, I mean, that's kind of more sound hypothesis than what you're showing, right?
But do you not think that at least part of subjective experiences you can decode from neural activity? Do you not think that at least part of subjective experiences you can decode from neural activity? I don't think all subjective experiences are not decoded from. That's a very strong statement.
Yes, that's about any kind of experience.
I think that some subjective experiences can be decoded from activity of neurons, for sure.
So why is this accepted?
Yeah, what is the-
problem?
I think there's a strong desire to like have that not be the case by people who are afraid of losing consciousness permanently after death. But
Right.
I think I'm skeptical when people make this claim without any evidence or really idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, I guess why can't this not be explained by activity of neurons? Just because we haven't done it yet doesn't mean that's not possible.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Like, let's narrow it down. Why do they think, or why does David think that this cannot be explained by activity subjective?
Because it's your own experience.
But I'm running the same hardware that, well,
The idea is maybe consciousness, it's kind of fundamental physical property.
that's this magic arrow.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
the neurons, I mean, the neurons are physical, aren't they? So like, I mean, if it's a physical property and the neurons are physical, why does it have to be mutually exclusive?
Do people believe that you can see that someone is happy from like neural data? Because I think you can.
I mean, it's a fundamental philosophical question.
I think you could maybe replace that with this cannot be fully explained.
Yeah,
But
that would be a bet, I think, because this sounds like such a
Because it
strong
can be
statement.
partially, and you can predict.
Yeah, but this cannot, I would replace, we don't know how.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean this cannot, but
Currently, at least we cannot.
yeah, we don't, but that means, yeah, we don't know how yet.
Cannot currently be fully
Yeah,
explained.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, she's rating like maybe it's weaker and weaker.
On Fridays.
Right, exactly. The specific neuron.
I mean, even if you have a subjective report from a person, it doesn't mean that this report reflects anything.
No, sure.
The argument for this hard problem of consciousness was that imagine two types of people. Some of them are real people with consciousness and they have this subjective experience, and some of them are zombie who can do everything like others, but they don't have this subjective experience. So they don't feel anything, they just have some kind of behavior as if they had some feelings.
Last time we had that situation in science, when, remember 16th century, when some things had phlogiston in them and some things didn't have phlogiston in them. And it turned out to be not a good theory, right? We had those theories before as well about earth element, fire element and stuff like that, but let's not go that far. Let's just talk about phlogiston. So
Okay.
this sounds like that to me.
Anyway, you can think that there is no hard problem of consciousness like different others, people like Churchlands and Dennett and a bunch of
No, but this is appealing to authority argument. It's just like, it's very hard to understand what they mean.
Yeah, I agree. There's also somewhere in between. I mean, like, you have people that are saying you can completely do it. There's people that say you can completely not do it. So like that's both very strong statements. But I agree it's a harder problem.
Okay, but I suppose that because of this kind of problem, there is a integrated information theory. Because if we can't just start the theory from the parts of the brain and from the neurons, we have to start this theory from something else. And that was the point of integrated information theory. So the author of this theory, Giulio Tononi, he assumed that, okay, So everyone except zombies has consciousness, and that's why we know what are the properties of consciousness. And let's put it as axioms of our theory. And let's suppose that, or let's take as a definition of consciousness that it's a kind of causal structure which is determined by nature. And so we will build all the mathematics are on this first axioms. So this is the logic of integrated information theory, axioms, then postulates, the mathematics. Then we can derive a physical complex that specifies a causal structure. Then we can find this kind of complex in the brain, and then we can test the theory. So this is the logic. All these first steps are theoretical. And for neurobiological naturalism, it means that, okay, let's assume that some processes or some parts of the brains are connected with consciousness, and then we can test different neural correlates of consciousness. These are the first axioms of integrated information theory. For example, the first one is intrinsic experience, which means that my experience exists from its own intrinsic perspective. So, for example, I have this kind of causal structure for my consciousness, and this structure exists from its own intrinsic perspective. The next axiom is composition. It means that consciousness is structured and each experience is composed of multiple phenomenological elementary parts. Like, for example, I have the experience of being here, and I have an experience of feeling cold, of talking, of watching the mug, and so on. The next axiom is information. It means that consciousness is specific, and each particular experience has its own causal structure. The next axiom is integration. It means that consciousness is unified, and each experience is irreducible and cannot be subdivided for different parts. For example, if I have the experience of being here and participating in this lecture, I don't have the experience of just seeing the right part of the room. Okay, and the last one.
When do you call input experience?
Input experience?
Why? This is just data input, and you call it experience.
Yeah, when is something an experience?
Sensory input.
Yeah, I guess that's, yeah, or is it something deeper?
I suppose it's about total experience. Maybe thoughts and all this stuff are also in this experience.
Okay.
Yes, and the last one is exclusion. And then Tononi further considers small causal mechanisms like here, and considers the phi function for these mechanisms as irreducible causal repertoire that can be generated by the system. There is a large phi. It's a measure of such kind of causal systems at all. And to calculate this large phi for the causal structure, we have to divide this system for different complexes, different parts that are mostly independent, and calculate this phi function for each of these parts. And the common phi will be the maximum from these parts. And so a fairly general rule is that if we have homogeneous connections, so the larger parts of the system are densely connected, the higher phi we have, like here.
So this is functional connectivity or causal.
Let's see.
It's not anatomical.
Yes.
Is it also, so if you have a bigger brain, like volume wise, like for animals, right? Like a mouse has a smaller brain than like a cat. Are you by definition more conscious?
I'm not sure if they have the same
If you have like more brain regions, I
density
guess, because
of this causal things. I mean, if you just take the same parts of the brain, and we have like 10,000 neurons connected with the same density, and we have 1,000 neurons. So in the second example, the phi will be higher. And also one of the biggest problem for this theory is that we can calculate for sure this phi function for small structures like with 100 pieces, but we can't calculate this phi for the brain. I guess even for the brain of mouse. Maybe for C. elegans we can, I'm not sure. And one more idea from all this theory is that for systems with only forward connections, the phi equals to 0. It means that there is no consciousness for such feed-forward systems.
Yeah, ChatGPT. Let me tell it that it's unconscious.
Okay. And so now let's go back to the paper. It was preliminary ideas about theories of consciousness, and this is from the paper. So these guys, the authors of the paper, tell us that look, this kind of tests now are used to find out what kind of theory is better. For example, the first one, it's visual masking. A briefly presented prime left pointing arrow can be rendered invisible by a trailing mask, a row with central gap, depending on the time interval between them. So, for example, if there is, if the figures are incongruent, the time difference will be larger, and if they're congruent, smaller. And the idea is that you need this experience be conscious to distinguish different directions of the figures. And the second example, it's about binocular rivalry, and usually if you have two different figures for left eye and for right eye, you can perceive just one of them at the first moment. And then if you add your conscious experience, you will see the second one. And so you will have some kind of time difference between perceiving the first figure and the second one.
If you are presented with two different images
Yes,
for each eye,
yes.
then what?
Then you can, for example, my right eye is leading. And if I have two different images at the same moment, like subconsciously, I have this experience from the right eye at the first moment. And then I need some time, like 100 milliseconds, to perceive the second image.
And that means you're conscious.
Yeah, that I'm also like, what?
Does it correlate with consciousness too? Like how large are the reaction time?
For example, theories that tell us that we need recurrent processing
Right.
for consciousness, they use this as argument. I mean, for example, this reentry predictive theory, they tell us that we need some time for this process, and we need some additional time for the second one.
So it's like being conscious in the moment as to what you're seeing, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like a focus. Right.
Yeah, kind of additional feedback.
Because I think attention is probably also like
Yeah, actually, for example, this test is a class of test for attention. I mean, in 80s, Posner and his colleagues used this Blanker tests, and they told that it's about attention, not about consciousness.
right. It would make sense that if you have recurrent attention, right, or attention shifts essentially, then that would also be some sort of recurrent processing in your brain, I guess.
And another idea is that for information integration theory, they tell us that P will be higher for awake person, and it will be lower for a human in dreamless sleep, or for example, for a person under anesthesia. And this is the main idea of unfolding argument.
Vince, do you know if we measured functional connectivity for anesthetized humans in fMRI? Is it lower, higher connected, or anything you remember? This frequency structure.
No, I don't remember the findings for that. But yeah, it's been looked at. They've also looked at like locked-in people,
Yeah.
things like that.
But for functional connectivity, like every image, like what happens
Right.
as a first approximation of the causal.
Right. So when you're, I believe it's reduced, but I'd have to look to be sure.
In this paper, they talk.
Certainly looked at it when you're sleeping, right?
They talk that the essential part for recurrent theories or for integrated information theory is that first we need the recurrent connections to have consciousness. It's one of the main ideas. And what is the main idea of this unfolding argument? that first, feed-forward neural networks were shown that they are universal functional approximators, and this also was shown for recurrent neural networks.
No, but recurrent neural networks are also Turing complete, which is different from universal functional approximation.
Seems like the big difference between feed forward and recurrent is just like the way the memory is activated, I guess. There's the memory exists between time steps.
Yeah.
But like feed forward, it's like throughout the whole network. And
It depends on how you run feed forward. But probably recurrent neural networks are Turing complete. I can dig out the references. I have them saved.
Okay, we can talk with the authors. And so that's why if we have some kind of input-output behavior, like for our experiments with cats and houses or something else, we actually have a kind of function, and we can approximate this function either with the help of recurrent network, either with the help of feed-forward network. So that's why if we use just this kind of scientific experiments with their behavior, we can't distinguish these two kinds of networks. And so if this is one of the main claims from this theory, is that we need the recurrent connections. This theory can be scientifically proven.
No, that's incorrect, because what they're not telling us about is exponential blow up of the weights. So exponential blow up in neurons is like to model a mouse brain with a recurrent neural network, you need a mouse brain size recurrent neural network. To model a mouse brain, say with feed-forward neural network, you need an elephant size feed-forward neural network or something like that. And there is a clear, measurable distinction.
something I wanted to say for a minute, that you saying recurrent neural networks are Turing complete. So like it brings it into automata theory with like Turing machines. And there's like a
Commutability theory, but
yeah, and Chomsky's hierarchy of like all the way from like regular expressions and the automata that parses them all the way up to the higher grammars that Turing machines can parse. But the big distinction between the automata is how they interact with memory. And then that tends to be the deciding force on how powerful the automata are.
Turing machine is nothing but a finite state automata plus the tape.
Yeah, the tape is the memory. So it can basically has an infinite memory. Like, that it can skip around.
Yeah, so you can store your memory inside of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And model this tiny recurrent neural network with a library,
Okay.
for example.
The reason that's important is it's just like I'm kind of like getting at like maybe that like the way our brain is managing memory is a big determining factor in our consciousness. Is what I would say.
Isn't this paper a little bit about just defining? So they come up with a definition and maybe it collides with everybody else's definition.
No, but it doesn't matter, because the claim here is because those networks can approximate the same function, they're indistinguishable. But I am saying that, as it stated, the claim is not scientific because they are distinguishable, their size is different. So for any real purposes, energy consumption, etc., because of the size, you will see the difference.
Because one network is bigger than another network.
Yes,
Necessarily,
that
it has to be bigger.
That
Yeah.
was one of the points. They said that okay, the only so the nature uses recurrent networks just because of the size of the skull. Because it's more efficient, you need much less neurons than for feed-forward networks. But it's not an argument that feed-forward networks can be conscious.
Is a library conscious?
Library.
But you're saying that they're contradicting themselves. in the
James Bond is
paper.
much better.
You're saying that they're contradicting themselves.
Yeah. They're trying to make a scientific argument, but
Yeah.
that it's not detectable, but it is detectable.
But they can still, maybe it's just a try, right? They give a shot and maybe the paper isn't. even
And I wasn't the
close.
reviewer.
Right, but you were missing.
Maybe that's a good thing.
That's an implied.
A nice reviewer for one.
I'm very nice negative reviewer.
No, sometimes the reviewers, I think they're nice, if they give you a lot of good feedback.
Brad's paper got rejected with like best paper ever, novel, everything. It's so nice to reject. I can send you the. Yeah. It was, oh, sorry, it's off topic.
Okay, so they said that actually we can build feed-forward systems which have global workspace, like in global workspace theory, and we can build structures with low fee that can explain some kind of wakeful experience or some experiments when fee should be higher and vice versa. And we usually use first-person reports to differentiate different states of consciousness. But according to these arguments, we can build different causal structures with low or high fee for the same first-person reports. So that's it. And one more question. Why do you think we need theories of consciousness at all?
It's a pretty important feature.
So I have 3 answers. The authors of theories usually tell that they need these theories because of medical ethics issues, because of treatment to animals, and current judgments. Writers and journalists usually tell that if we will have the accurate theory of consciousness, we would be able to control the minds, to do upload, and to build a conscious AI. But actually, scientists create theories of consciousness because of fame, fun, grants, and to motivate students. That's all.
Yeah.
You can say it about anything. We do. And when you say theory of consciousness,
Build theories of consciousness.
yeah, what do you mean when you say theory of consciousness? Mechanism? How consciousness arises, or what is theory of consciousness?
Is it
It's
the same
referring to
thing
the
as a
four that you talked
philosophy?
about, right?
Yeah, but I don't know what is the meaning, of this.
This has kind of been my general complaint about the word consciousness in general, is like the ambiguity around the word. Seems like
Intelligence, right?
there's a reluctance to make it something that's like falsifiable in a way that so you can
Functional
always be kind of in all of it. But
Too simple.
I think there are different definitions of it. Like if you talk to one person, they will talk about consciousness, and then you talk to, for example, if you talk to someone like a mathematical major that has a lot of education, he explains what consciousness is, and then you talk to someone who is very educated, they will give a different definition.
I think we just don't know enough to actually define it. That's,
Yeah.
I think, the main issue. I mean, you need to first understand at least like 80% of it to define it, I feel like, or like 50% or something.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like quantum, like we knew quantum existed, but nobody could define what it was, you know what I mean, like at some point. And then they start to study it and then slowly build up enough knowledge to say, okay, well, this is and this is not quantum. But yeah, I feel like we just don't know enough to really, that's why it's a theory, right? I feel like not a definition of consciousness yet. We first need to like check it, I guess. Like we need to.
Yeah, I mean, for example, the theory of brain is simpler in terms that we actually know what's in the brain.
Right, yeah.
But I think that you know some things about consciousness, but we don't know what it looks like in the brain. But I think like if a person sits here and they said, oh, was the talk about mouse, was the talk about popcorn research, then we would be pretty agree that that person wasn't conscious about what we talked about. And I think it's the same thing if you sit at the restaurant and if there's a friend on another table, you can eavesdrop on that person, so then you're conscious about what they are saying, but maybe you're not conscious about what other tables are saying. So you can be conscious about.
But this is again about just perception. What is
But
magical
we don't know
about
what it looks like in the brain.
Yeah, but I think that is partly important to
Attention.
really define what it is, even in a
Yeah, I mean,
psychological
that's kind of what I was
perspective.
thinking during the discussion.
Yeah,
Attention.
maybe not even
That
everybody
sounds
agrees on that.
similarly used as the
Yeah.
word attention.
Right, I think people don't, yeah. I don't think that's a general,
Right.
the way people, and also, I mean, there's obviously like this psychological way of looking at consciousness, kind of what you were describing, like sociology and stuff, but you also, I think it is important to understand kind of, we know it is somehow embedded in the brain somehow, you know what I mean, or like in the body generally.
I mean, there's some religious people and they say, no, it's not in the brain.
Right. Yeah. I mean, do this.
And it's not just
do this-
one religion either,
Yeah.
like the Buddhists kind of think that like in their meditative states that sometimes that they might like transcend out of their body and communicate with like higher realms and stuff like this. So it's like, does that happen? Is there any like external aspect of consciousness?
Right,
That's
but
interesting.
I feel like that also then we just have different definitions of consciousness, right? I think.
Yes, the word is
I think
definitions.
we are researchers, so I think
Yeah, but
at
that's
least
what
we
I-
can agree that it's in the.
Yeah, but so we should probably.
No, I don't know that.
Well, we can define it to be that way, right? We can define like the mechanisms that we perceive in the brain are what we define as consciousness, and then maybe things that are, you know, happening outside of the brain are, we call it a different word, you know what I mean? I feel like it's not bad to say, okay, well, we can just use different definitions. But I feel like part of being able to really define what it is also kind of like getting more at like the mechanism that we're talking about, or this like subjective experience that we're talking about. I feel like we're still kind of starting,
Yeah, I agree.
because, yeah, I think we all just have different ideas of what it is. Anyways, I think a lot of people have different, just as people have different consciousnesses, potentially, people also have different perceptions of consciousness.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future, someone will come up with an idea that will get extremely popular and maybe.
Well, things that are falsifiable are probably things that are gonna be things in the brain, like neuroactivity. That's right, that we can like test that, because like you said, also subjective experiences are very hard to test because we just don't know if people are like, if they're lying or they're like misperceiving it, maybe their own subjective experiences.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, like near-death experiences are really weird too, because like there's a lot of people who like while they're dying and end up in the hospital, like during like that few minute period when they're dying, they have like super perception of everything around them, even though their eyes are closed. And is that just their memory filling in like gaps, or is that like actual some sort of indication that consciousness isn't like just your input devices being fully functional or something? But I don't know.
But to that, TJ says the word is has different semantic based on which of these 5 perspectives we give it. And I think this is also like semantics based, like with back to my favorite phlogiston and the fire, we still have the words for fire even now, even though we know it's just oxidizing. But we use the old language when we communicate. So right now we're using the old language without the new precise language in science, what we mean. And we say consciousness and mean,
Yeah,
Cyrus said, oh, he was just not paying attention, he was unconscious. And all other sorts of colloquial meanings, but we don't have the language like you are saying, like that will be totally different, but very precise, and people will not use it, I guess, for in common situations, but we will know as scientists what we're talking about
Right,
eventually.
I think it's gonna converge. Maybe we used to call lightning fire as well, maybe you don't know, but at some point we converge on one meaning, which is fine.
Yeah.
Just think we're in the early stages of that convergence, which is like, that's what happens in science and language in general, I feel like.
Great. Any questions from online? Or well recorded? Okay, TJ, I feel like each of us gravitate more to the field, biopsychological, physical, etc. We know more about and want it to be correct. Oh, we gravitate to the field we know more about and want it to be correct in terms of that field or another. So, yeah.
Yeah, just a small comment. Sorry about that.
are there parts of consciousness that is kind of laid out that one knows it's consciousness and it's perfectly defined?
Well, like for the locked-in patients mentioned, we have some definition when it is okay to turn them on. Even though I don't know what that means, but there is a procedure, because when you need to take an action, you have like schizophrenia. Do we really know what it is? But we have a book. We know, okay, by this book, this is schizophrenia, this is not schizophrenia. And so the same with locked-in patients, the question of consciousness. Okay, are they dead in terms of the consciousness? Go by the book, yes or no.
All right.
Even though, I mean, we take the action, there are rules. So you can go and see how they define that type of consciousness.
It's the same as brain dead, is that true?
Yeah.
That's.
But like the sleeping person is unconscious, from the example from the slide, is unconscious in your definition.
Yeah.
They're just not paying attention. My internal life is super happy when I'm sleeping.
But I mean, they
Lots of stuff is
specifically said dreamless though, which implies that potentially if you dream, you are still a little bit conscious, yeah.
Mhm.
Because they specifically said dreamless, which I think is a big distinction, actually.
Did you have a comment? Mahfouz?
Yeah, so
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
actually wanted to ask. So there are different perspectives of consciousness theories. So in philosophy, it is said that no theory is just new problems and questions. So are these the comments of these authors, or how did you define
No,
the
this is
philosophical views?
my slide.
I don't think so. I
There are
disagree
lots of
with
theories of
this.
philosophy, right?
It is
Your
not,
philosophy for this.
yeah, so
No, I suppose that our philosophers, they don't create theories. This is my claim. If you disagree, you can argue.
yeah, oh, yeah, I just wanted to know if that this comment is coming out of you or from the authors. That was my question.
She was just soliciting some
Yeah,
response.
It's a provocative claim.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Provoking us to think. But yeah, very interesting. So the only true theory is still the causal learning theory. So let's stick to it. Like that's my.
Yeah, actually, it's the most popular one.
The only true theory is Sergey's theory.
Of course, yeah.
And
let's
my-
keep pushing.
I have one comment. So, when we are discussing consciousness, we are just delimiting the definition
Thanks, man.
of consciousness to a
I have a
very
question.
narrow area.
Do you need to get a
Yeah.
different kind of pizza? Because I don't, there's a lot of students in here, but there's only like 1 or 2 slices of pizza. Are you guys gonna eat after, or you guys just don't like the pizza?
The pizza is eaten every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
If
seems like it's just mostly still there.
It usually goes to the kitchen and then.
It gets eaten later, okay, not just because you're so intent on discussing.
especially Noah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was saying something. So I was saying that when we are discussing consciousness, we are actually narrowing down the definition of self-awareness, some kind of thing that
Expanding actually. Consciousness is kind of more than self-awareness.
But we are defining the consciousness here in terms of, for example, I am conscious now. When I will be sleeping, I will be unconscious.
Yes.
But we are defining consciousness with respect to that we are now conscious, when we will be sleeping, we will be unconscious.
No, we're trying to
Some people
define
don't believe that that's
consciousness.
the case. Some people believe that consciousness is constant, that you're also constant when you're sleeping.
Yeah,
Some
we are
people believe
conscious,
it's
we are
conscious when
always
you're brain
conscious,
dead.
that's what I'm saying, that we are not, the self-perception or self-consciousness is not the consciousness. But everything is conscious of itself. For example, I have a body, but I only know about 1% of this, right? I'm conscious about, for example, 0.5% of my existence. But 99.5% of my existence is working by themselves without being conscious. I
Then
mean,
you don't
I
count your
don't.
heartbeats.
yeah, I don't count my heartbeats.
But today is a special day.
Yeah.
You should count your heartbeats now.
Yeah, so everything in my body is working by themselves. So I think they are conscious of themselves. So it is not that I am only aware of my 1% existence.
But that's your unconscious.
You're a panpsychist.
Saying,
You're a panpsychist.
Or octopus.
I think, I don't know, I don't think I'm panpsychist, but I think it's interesting the idea that just like consciousness, like it has like a hierarchy of like qualities, like all the way down to the atom would be interesting, like just the act of like physical activity.
So Freud, he talked about the subconscious.
yeah, subconscious, yeah, right.
It's,
Is it a?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, are we done?
But
Okay, done. Bye, online people who